Hi there, I'm Vincent Boss and I provide dating and self-improvement advice. And in today's podcast, we're going to be discussing they start missing you when this occurs. I provide audio coaching for breakup recovery, trying to get an ex back, attracting someone new, and life coaching. Visit www.dateme.tips for more details. Please check your spam and junk folders if you are expecting an email from me. Check out my socials for extra content. The links are in the description. So now let's get back into today's podcast. And today we are discussing they start missing you when this occurs. So if you have been dumped and want to try to get your ex back, you will want to know what happens to cause your ex to miss you. In today's podcast, I'll be discussing 3 situations which your ex will miss you if they occur. So let's get straight into this, and point number 1 is coincidences. Now, when we're considering trying to get an ex back, we often think about the things we need to do as a dumpee, or the things that your ex-dumper needs to go through from their position. But sometimes coincidences, which aren't technically connected to yourself, the dumpee, aren't technically connected to anything the dumper has done either. Sometimes coincidences can actually be the thing which will make your ex start to miss you. Now, what do I mean by coincidences? Well, these are things which you as a dumpee have had no actual real influence on, other than the fact that your relationship has, of course, planted seeds in your ex's mind, which will start to grow into missing you if they are watered by the correct instances and situations. So let's just give an example. Maybe your ex-dumper is walking about in the city and they think to themselves, wait a minute, is that my dumpee? The other side of the road? They seem to be just the other side of the road. What's the odds on that? They take another glance. They're not really sure. Was it their dumpee? Was it not? Then the person crosses the road and they realise, no, that wasn't my dumpee. That's just someone who looks like them. It's a lookalike. But in that very moment, the dumper is thinking of their dumpee. Now, you might think, well, that type of thing sounds very random. Why on earth would that mean that they start to miss me as a dumpee? Why would my dumper start to miss me just because they've seen someone who looks like me? Well, listen, I've spoke to many dumpers over the years, and you would be surprised at the amount that have told me that they thought that they'd seen their ex-dumpee. They wasn't fully sure if it was them or not, or maybe they actually confirmed it wasn't. But it did start to grow something in their mind, wondering about what their dumpee had been up to, because perhaps they hadn't heard from them in a long time. So that is one example, a real life example of how a coincidence can really come into play. Now, it isn't just about lookalikes. There are other possibilities as well, one of which is your name, the name of the dumpee. Let's just say, for instance, that the dumper is living their life, doing whatever it is they do, and then someone they come across introduces themselves and they have the same name as you, the dumpee. Now this, of course, is going to make them think of you. It is a trigger. It's a natural trigger for them to think of their dumpee as soon as they hear your name. In particular, if your name is somewhat unusual, but even if it isn't, even if it is a fairly common name, you would have had the most special version of that name to them. Because of your relationship, so if they hear anybody with that name, they will think of you as a trigger. And similar to the lookalike situation where they thought they saw you but they didn't, it's going to make them think and wonder about you. And if you've been living your life in the right way, dumpees, this is where this can start to turn into wonder and thinking and considering what you're doing with your life. I haven't heard from my dumpee in so long. What are they doing? What could they be up to? Those are the thoughts which can develop from thinking to wondering to eventually possibly missing you. And it can really pull on their mindset if they speak to someone who has the same name as you. And again, it's just a coincidence. It's nothing but you as a dumpee have actually done. But when we've been in the position of being dumped, we need to take any benefit that we can, any helping hand that can come our way, we will greatly be happy to take. Now, there are other coincidences as well. I'll tell you one more just for today's podcast, and that is smell. Now, hopefully when I say smell, we're not talking about something bad, okay? We're not talking about a bad smell. We're talking about your scent. Maybe you wear a certain perfume. Maybe you wear a certain aftershave or cologne. Whatever it is you may wear, if your ex-dumper smells that smell again via somebody just walking by them, maybe it's not anybody else but they know, doesn't even have to be anybody that they spend time with particularly, it could just be walking around the city and someone walking by them and they smell that scent that you always used to wear. That triggers real powerful memories. The sense of smell is one of the most powerful triggers of memories. And therefore, if you are someone who wears a certain perfume, a certain cologne, a certain aftershave, whatever it is that you may be, if you wear something which is almost like your signature smell, your signature scent, then if your ex-dumper ever smells that again, they will think of you and they will likely think positive thoughts. Because when they're thinking of you on the basis of smelling something nice, they're not likely to think back to the last argument you sadly may have had. No, instead, they're probably going to think of times where you were out and about, at a restaurant, at a party, at a get-together, being social. If you were wearing your scent, maybe that was something you particularly did when you were out going somewhere nice. Okay, maybe it was something you wore for special occasions, and therefore if they smell that smell, they're going to think back to those special occasions. And this can really help your cause as a dumpee without you really doing anything. That is the beauty of the coincidences. And that's why when we're speaking about in today's podcast, they start missing you when this occurs. Well, if there is a coincidence, whether they think they see you, whether they speak to someone with your name, or whether they smell someone who really smells exactly the same as you generally used to do, that and many others that I don't have a chance to mention today is going to make your ex-dumper think of you, possibly wonder about you, and potentially miss you. So now let's get into point number 2 and the second point of today's podcast. Please like this video if you're watching on YouTube and subscribe to the channel. And point number 2 is struggling to sleep. Now, when I say struggling to sleep, I don't necessarily mean that they are going through their own difficult period of time because you've broken up and they can't stop thinking about you and that's why they can't sleep. No, I'm not speaking about that because, of course, if they are at that stage, then they are already missing you. So it doesn't mean that your ex-dumper can't get to that point where they can't sleep because of the worry of wanting to get back together. That can certainly happen, but that will happen after they start missing you. Now, we're talking about when your ex-dumper will start missing you when something occurs. And when we're talking about sleep in that regard, when we're talking about why they would struggle to sleep technically before they're missing you, which then causes them to miss you, it is often because people who've been in long-term relationships are not used to sleeping by themselves anymore. And you might relate to this. As a dumpee, unfortunately, you've probably gone from sleeping with your partner every day to probably right now sleeping alone. And that is something that you no doubt have gone through yourself of thinking, this feels different. I don't really like it. I got used to sleeping with my partner. I used to hug and cuddle and hold, just their presence next to me. That is something that you will really feel and really likely miss as a dumpee. But what you might not have realised is that your ex-dumper is probably going to be feeling the same. Now, of course, depending on your specific unique situation, we can't definitively say this is going to pull on your dumper, but I have been told by dumpers that they've struggled to sleep because they didn't really even consider when they ended a relationship how they would feel sleeping alone in comparison to sleeping with you, their dumpee. Just because they've ended a relationship, it doesn't mean that they hated every single thing about your relationship. In fact, a lot of the time, most of the relationship was really good. It was just a few things, unfortunately, which tipped the balance. And maybe sleeping together, and I don't even mean being particularly intimate per se, I just mean laying next to each other, holding one another, hugging one each other, those types of things during sleep, before, after sleep, in bed. Those are the things which can really pull on you. Those are the things which you can really miss. And as a dumpee or a dumper, you might struggle to sleep once that's been changed. Our sleep routine is very particular for each individual person. We get into routines. And if you are used to sleeping with someone, maybe for many years, and then they've gone, whether or not you were the instigator as per why they've gone. If they have gone, this is something you're going to notice. This is something you are likely to miss. And this is something that you might find is causing you real difficulty in sleeping. So if you are already noticing the absence of your dumpee, if you're already feeling a little unusual, different to how you expected because they are no longer there, and then on top of that you can't actually sleep, you can't settle, you're not getting enough sleep, well, those things combined are definitely things which will start to make you think, you know what, have I made a huge mistake? I think I miss my dumpee. I think I do miss their presence with me. I think I miss the soothing effect of being with them in an intimate or sleeping situation. And maybe I made a huge mistake by the breakup, because if you feel that you want to be with someone in bed, then that is something really powerful and something that you will realise is maybe bigger than the problems that you considered caused the breakup. So if you're a dumper and you struggle to sleep, this is definitely something which can make you reconsider the whole breakup. Whether or not you feel you were in the right, during that time it doesn't matter. We live in the moment, we feel in the moment, we experience in the moment. And if you can't sleep, and if you are missing the presence of your dumpee, then that is just one step away from you literally missing them in every single sense. Now, if you would like advice and support about how to try and increase the chance of one day getting your ex back, then you may want to consider my audio coaching service, where me and you can speak one-on-one about your unique specific situation. Go to my website www.dateme.tips for more information about how I can become your coach and your teammate via my audio coaching service. Talking about your feelings can also improve your mental health. It helps prevent the build-up of negative emotions, which can lead to stress, anxiety, depression, and even physical health issues. Speak your heart to free your mind. So now let's get into point number 3 and the final point of today's podcast. If you feel that this podcast has helped you, then please consider buying me a coffee. The link to do so is in the description. And point number 3 is cancelled plans. So today we're speaking about why your ex-dumper would start missing you the dumpee. What has to occur for them to feel a longing for you? And one of the most powerful ways and reasons that your ex-dumper would start to miss you is due to the cancelled plans that had to be cancelled due to the breakup. Now, it's very unusual for a relationship to end, especially a long-term relationship where there is absolutely no plans in the future. Now, maybe you think, well, me and my ex, we never really did too much, and there wasn't really any plans. I'm still sure there would have been some plans in the future. They don't necessarily have to be huge, massive plans, but there'll be something on the calendar. But in a lot of instances, there are some big, massive plans. Maybe you planned on going on holiday or vacation together during a certain time of year. Maybe you did it every year. And even though it wasn't on the calendar yet, you just naturally expected it to happen again. Maybe you have other events to attend, a wedding, for example, or whatever it may be. These plans are now cancelled. Yes, it was the dumper's fault, technically speaking, that these plans are cancelled because they've ended a relationship. But it doesn't mean that they won't feel affected when those dates on the calendar come by and you are not together, not doing the things that you were supposed to. If you plan to go to a wedding together, then what this likely means is one of 3 possibilities. Either 1, you both go and you're not going together, and this might feel somewhat awkward, and even if you manage to try to stay as relaxed as possible around one another, this is something where you're going to be thinking of one another, you're seeing one another, you're at the same event. Your ex-dumper is definitely going to be thinking of you then. They're seeing you. And if you can act in a positive way, if you can look your best and be your best, they will likely leave that event thinking of you, wondering about you, and possibly even missing you. Now, what about the other possibilities? Well, maybe, again, we're using an example of a wedding. Maybe it's not something that you both go to. Maybe it was one of your friends more than the other. Maybe it was your ex-dumper's friend, okay? So you as the dumpee, you're no longer going to this wedding, but the dumper is going. But instead of having a +1, they're going alone. They're going to miss your presence. You should have been there. This is where they will think about you once more and possibly miss you. They will see everybody paired up. Couples often go to weddings. Obviously, the wedding itself is about love. If they are alone, they're going to be thinking of you and wondering what they've done. Why have I done this? I didn't have to be alone here. My dumpee could have been with me. Now, what about if it was actually more your friend? And the dumper, your ex-dumper, is no longer going to the wedding, but you are. Well, guess what? On that calendar date that they might have ping up on their phone, for instance, or something they've written down where they was going to go somewhere, well, guess what? They're not going anymore. And even though they might not be a huge, big friend of this couple getting married, they were planning on going. And now they're not. And instead they're thinking of you and wondering about who you might be going with, whether you have a new plus one. This is where jealousy can start to grow. And that's just the wedding example. What about if the example that I also gave is that you had a holiday or a vacation planned? Maybe that was a date on the calendar you was really looking forward to. Well, now you're not going. And even though if you don't go, probably neither of you would go, this is still something that they can wonder and start to miss you about, because they're sitting at home alone instead of enjoying a great holiday or vacation with you. This is something they will reconsider through their thoughts and their mind, make them think of you, and they can miss you. Perhaps you hadn't even got round this year to booking your holiday, but every year you go through the same time, you go the same month. Maybe, for instance, you always go in August on vacation. So what happens when August rolls around and there is no vacation? It doesn't matter that there's nothing actually technically to be cancelled, but could you just always go during that time? And when that month comes and goes and you don't go anywhere, this is when you will think of your ex, and more importantly, this is where and when they will think of you. If you come into their mind, there is every chance they will start to wonder about you, and that can develop into missing you, as long as you aren't chasing them away, if you aren't causing them bother, as long as you aren't doing the wrong things to make them feel, yeah, actually I've made the right choice. As long as you aren't doing that, and instead you're doing the right things, including implementing my version of the no contact rule, well then guess what? Your ex-dumper is very likely to start missing you when those things we spoke of today occur.